Welcome to the Tech Baddie Podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Sweedar, and today I'm joined by my friend, Christou, to discuss tips, tactics, and strategies for effectively breaking into tech. So, George, thank you so much for joining me here today.
It's my pleasure.
One of the great things I want to just touch on, too, as we get started for the people who don't know you, you and I actually go way back as far as my tech journey goes. Earlier this year, we got connected on LinkedIn, and you were so kind to reach out and honestly just offer me help, advice. You're one of the first people to do so, and we've been pals ever since, which has been fantastic. But I'd love for you to just take a minute to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background.
Wow. So I've been a university professor for almost 20 years. I've been in the industry for more than I've been a professor. I've been in the industry for almost 30 years now, which is really, wow. That's a long time. Yeah, I've done pretty much, you name it, I've done it in the industry.
Right.
I started coding when we were working with Windows applications. Even before that, I've been using databases that probably most people your age have never heard of.
Sure.
And then I really wanted to go into academia. And I got a PhD. I started teaching, and I kept up my consulting with the industry.
That's awesome. And I love, too, that you are so passionate about helping others, about educating others. I think that that's something that is kind of a calling, honestly, I think especially with teaching. And so you having been a university professor for so many years, I know you witnessed firsthand not only the changing landscape of technology for such a long time, but also the continuous struggles that so many students and also career switchers face over time. So in that experience, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've seen people go through?
Well, the first thing that everyone goes through, right? Me, obviously you, and pretty much everyone that studies programming in general is getting it. It's the understanding of, oh, now I can actually write a program and I can make this thing do whatever I want. That's a huge revelation. It's a huge light bulb, if you will.
Right.
And for the people that actually go through that process and get it, it's a wonderful thing to see. But it's also a challenge because there are people out there that perhaps don't have the patience, they don't have the knack, they don't really like the way that programming is as an art and as a science. So programming is not for everyone, and that's fine.
I love that point specifically. I just want to put in that a pin in that there because, yes, I think that sometimes people think the idea of software engineering can actually be a little bit sexy, just the tech industry itself. You know, it's very remote friendly, generally speaking. You can make really good money, and there's a lot of creativity. And it's also so prevalent, like it's not going anywhere. It's just getting bigger. It's seeping into every other industry. Like any company of any size, they have a software team, right? They have websites, applications, databases that need to be maintained. So it's a very lucrative industry to want to get into. And I think especially whenever COVID hit and a lot of people found themselves unfortunately put out of work, and a lot of people had to make some difficult decisions. And I know that there was also such a big wave of new boot camps, career switchers specifically. And it is true. It's not for everybody, but that's okay. I'm not meant to be a painter. You know, there are so many things.
Same here. Don't ask me to paint anything.
Sure. And that's okay. I'm so thankful that it takes all kinds to make the world go round. But that was actually something I experienced in my boot camp. And now that I have sort of a platform and an audience, I do try to tell people who ask me like, hey, should I do a boot camp, or what courses would you recommend? And I try to tell people like, please try at the very least like a free tutorial or free code camp or something, just to see if you like it, to see if this is even something that makes sense for you. Because sitting down and learning a new language, right? And they are languages.
Oh, yeah.
And having the honestly the mental fortitude to sit there for hours and figure out why this isn't working like it should be, it can drive honestly even me crazy. And I
It,
actually love it.
trust me, it drives everyone crazy. I've been working on a code base earlier today, actually, and I was getting this bug that was just not going away, and I literally wanted to punch my computer. So, so you're not the first, you're not the last. Everyone goes through that. But I wanted to add that even though programming may not be for everyone, there are so many other avenues to explore in the tech industry.
Yes.
There's support. And I met some wonderful and extremely knowledgeable support people in the tech industry. There's DevOps, the people who actually get our code out there in the production environment, and amazing people. And they do code, but they don't code in the way that a programmer does.
Right.
They use other tools and so on. So there's many avenues to consider. And if you don't like programming, you may actually find that you like doing something else. It's sad that those other aspects of the technology industry are not as highlighted as
I
writing
agree.
code, as software engineering, software development.
I totally agree with you. And I do think part of that, kind of going back to the interesting wave that has shaped the tech market and how it is today, was like the rise of those crash courses, those boot camps, and all of that was targeted towards becoming a software engineer. And to be honest, that was all I really knew, even whenever I was exploring my options, because that's what was pushed in front of me, right? That's all of the content that I kept seeing, and it did work out for me. But you're right, I do think that it's not quite highlighted as well. And even going into, okay, so you decide you want to be a software engineer, you want to do programming, you've made that huge decision, right? And that's the path you want to go down to. One thing I wanted to touch on with you is how overwhelming it can be to figure out what to do next. And that sounds so simple, but it's not. It's not. I mean, there are a billion languages, a billion frameworks. Everyone in tech also has an opinion.
Yep.
They all think that their opinion is correct, which is great. And it can be really hard for someone who does not know anything beyond that they want to learn how to code to decide what to do next.
So I was actually discussing that on another podcast that I was on. And let me say this first. There's no right language. There's no correct language to begin. There's no correct way to do this. So if you decide that you want to start with Python, okay, be my guest. If you want to start with JavaScript, be my guest. The point is, and I think a lot of people who want to go into software development miss it, is that software development is not about programming. So the language is just a tool, and there are tools that are more suited towards specific tasks. So if you, for example, like to create websites, learn HTML, CSS. If you want to do back-end development, if you want to go into fintech, for example, if you want to learn how banks move your money, you may want to go into C, C++, Golang, Rust. If you want to do ML, machine learning, AI, well, there's a bunch of languages. Python is very good for that. But there are also other languages like Lisp. That's a very, very old language that basically begun the AI revolution, So it doesn't really matter. What matters is to understand what software development is. And software development is problem solving.
Yes.
You hear a problem from someone, and now you need to be able to understand the actual problem, because most of the clients that you're going to interact with, they don't really describe the actual problem. They will describe perhaps their thoughts about causes and effects, but the actual problem is for us to understand and then analyze and then synthesize a solution. And that's not software development, that's software design.
Right.
And if you really want to become a software developer, then you need to understand software design while you're learning about software development.
You put that so well. And I think you make a good point too. Again, I'm coming at this from me breaking into this industry this year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I started a boot camp in January, and
Mm-hmm.
that mindset was I want to learn how to code. I want to get a job from learning how to code.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting. I think that one of the things too that is such a big thing in this industry is the imposter syndrome. And that was something I never experienced until I started on this endeavor, because, and it mainly rooted in the fact that I came to realize how much I don't know. I was learning so much, but I realized how much there was left beyond that, right? As I was breaking into getting past the basics of the HTML, CSS into JavaScript. And then next thing you know, there's React. And then what is that? And then there's actually all these other frameworks. And then you get into the database. And that is one small slice. And that can be very, it's just overwhelming. And that goes back to people getting into that sort of analysis paralysis,
Wow.
as
Yeah.
I call it. And I'm quite prone to that. I'm very perfectionistic, and I have a tendency to get kind of frustrated if I don't get onto things immediately. So for me, a boot camp was, I think, a really good decision, because I had to get over that. I had deadlines to meet. You know, I had some accountability, and it made me get out of my own head, because I'd actually been dabbling a little bit with learning to code in my own time, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And some people can, but I was like, all right, that's enough, because it wasn't perfect, and then I'd stop. And it was not effective. It was not, yeah.
And that makes absolute sense, right? Actually, being a perfectionist is extremely good for writing code, because the machine understands only what it understands. It can't
Right.
infer what you want.
true.
There's this famous quote, I don't remember by who, but I wish my computer did what I wanted it to do, not what I tell it to do. You know.
That's so good.
But going back to pathways to getting into the industry, a bootcamp is a great way to be introduced into the programming language. But then there are a lot of mindset shifts that need to occur, because, and that's what I was seeing from my students. And I'd like to reveal on your show that I'm coming up with a book, probably early next year. It's
Oh
going
my
to be ready.
gosh. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. For people who want to get into the industry, or who have gotten into the industry as junior developers and are feeling that overwhelm, that imposter syndrome. So I'm trying to give them specific ways of dealing with certain types of overwhelm. Because
Right.
it's not just feeling that you don't know anything. Trust me, if there's one person that feels they don't know anything, it's me. I've been in this industry for 30 years, and I've had to change everything every few years. The language that I've used to create apps, the language that I've had to use to create designs, the databases that I've used, everything I've been changing. And that's what I like about this field. You know, it's
Right.
ever changing, it's ever evolving, and there's always new things to learn. To me, that's wonderful. And there are people out there that don't like that. They like the stability of, you know, I know this, I can do this, I don't need to feel overwhelmed anymore. But there are other people that enjoy the challenge, and they want to learn more things, and they want to keep learning new things. And I'm not saying this as a good thing or as a bad thing. It's just a fact of life for software developers. You know, you need to keep learning. You need to keep on top of everything. And that is overwhelming. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, that's fine. Just remember that if you understand the fundamentals, if you can understand problems and can solve problems, then it doesn't matter what language you're going to solve them in. It doesn't matter which tools you're using. You have the ability to learn those tools and move on.
No, that you're exactly correct. And to me, I agree with you. It's also very exciting to me. I love to learn. I've always been that way. I've always been interested in a billion different things, and I enjoy figuring out why things work the way they do, why they are the way they are. This field really just found me at the perfect time in my life, and I'm so thankful. It's been such a positive experience for me, even though, to match your point, I absolutely still feel that sense of overwhelm every single day. And it's so rewarding, though, whenever I do feel like I've conquered a new concept, or I realize that my code is getting better and my projects that I'm building are more advanced, and it's not just like a little calculator app anymore. And that's okay, because that's where we all start, right? Be proud of those wins. But seeing your own progress is very powerful and is also very rewarding. And that's another thing too I wanted to touch on with how this landscape is consistently evolving. I can't have this conversation with you and not talk about AI and how it's a good thing, bad thing. It's going to take our jobs, and it's not, and everything that goes with it. There's so much noise around that specific concept that I think it can actually even be off-putting to beginners such as myself. I get messages these days, like, again, from many other people considering like a boot camp or taking a course, being like, should I even bother if all these jobs are going to go away? Like, should I even try to learn how to code? I mean, these are real questions that people have.
Okay, let's put it this way. Generative AI is another tool in our tool set, in our toolbox.
Right.
It makes us more efficient. But if you don't understand the fundamentals, and I'm going to keep saying that, if you don't understand the fundamentals, then, and you ask ChatGPT to create this wonderful app for you, and then it suddenly crashes. What's up now? Who's going to debug it? Are you going to ask ChatGPT to debug it? Wonderful. Give it your code. It's going to spew back better code. However, the problems, the underlying problems, scalability. Anyway, let's not go into the technical problems, but the problems will still be there. And the reason is because these generative AI models, they know what they know, and what they don't know, they fill in the blanks with whatever they believe it's okay to put in there. I've used generative AI to help me with stuff that I wanted to understand, and I mostly use generative AI for generating small examples. And this is one of the things that I love about generative AI. If I don't know how to do something, for example, my language of choice is Go these days. Okay. And I wanted to use a library that allows me to connect to a third-party integration and do something with that. And I was looking for one specific thing to do in that integration. So I go and ask ChatGPT, please give me an example of how to do this. Small example so that I can understand it. Wonderful. Spews out beautifully written code that did not work. So I tell it, okay, this function that you're giving me here doesn't exist in the library. And of course, it replies wonderfully. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. That function doesn't exist in the library. So why did you give it to me in the first place? Let me give you another function. So it rewrites the code with another function, another way of doing that. I use it. Obviously, that doesn't exist either. So I tell it, this doesn't exist either. And it tells me, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. It doesn't exist. So here's how you can do this in another way. And it gives me the exact same way it gave me two steps back. So no matter what happens, these tools are never going to be perfect. But the other thing, again, is if you don't understand their limitations, if you don't understand the code they're giving you, if you don't understand how you should be structuring code and why your code should be structured in the way that it is, then you're not a developer, you're just a copy-paste machine. Sure. And no, these tools are not going to replace us. Eventually, they may. In 30, 40, 50 years, who knows what's going to happen? ChatGPT was just a dream when Turing came up with the concept of AI. So I can't predict the future, but I'm saying that for the next 10, 15 years, we're safe.
I totally agree with you. And also, I love how you touched on the fact that that AI loves to give answers. It's just designed to do that instead of saying, I have no idea. Like, I can't help you, buddy. It's going to feed you something.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are also tools, Copilot, several others that exist. And I totally agree with you. I think that they can help us be more productive, be more efficient, quicker, but that's based upon you having the fundamental understanding. And one thing that I'm actually very glad that my boot camp teachers advised us with is to avoid using those tools during the duration of our boot camp as we were learning. And to this day, I still don't. That's just a personal choice. Go do whatever you want, but I don't. I will say I do use ChatGPT for debugging because I don't understand why my code isn't doing what I want it to do, so to speak, and that's kind of helpful and that's great, but I'm still so determined to gain a deep understanding. I think that is also something I advise other people who talk to me about wanting to break into the industry. And I agree with you too, just it's not even necessarily about which language you choose, and that can become just this whirlpool vortex of overload, but pick one and learn it really, really well, understand exactly why it does what it does and what it should be doing. And I still, even though I'm new, haven't ventured too far out of my little JavaScript bubble because I'm still building very aggressively with that. And there's just so much to learn. And I try to code every single day. And it's been such great practice. But again, it just goes into every day I truly discover something new and then realize I've never seen this before. What is this? And it's exciting, but it's a good practice because I think there can be pressure with all of the things that are pushed upon people. Again, talking about people entering the industry or exploring, entering to, learn a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And you're going to find yourself treading water and not really going anywhere. I always advise against that.
Exactly. Well, here's my advice for a pathway into tech, right? Pick a language, learn that. Once you learn the language, I'm going to say well enough, whatever that means, then learn data structures. Once you understand data structures, learn databases. And once you understand those three concepts, then start venturing into foreign territory, I want to say. For example, most people will begin with objective programming. They're going to pick JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, Golang, Rust, whatever. Now, once you understand functional programming, then your brain, well, first, they blow your brain, and then start thinking about code in a different way.
Right.
You start thinking about problems in a different way. You start thinking about solving problems in a different way. And all of these things, little by little, create that maturity that turns you from a junior developer into a senior developer, into a whatever, steps of development in developer land we have. But that doesn't happen overnight. And I see a lot of people who just want to become experts overnight, and that cannot be. You can't learn everything in 3 months, 6 months. No, my students were going through a 4-year program. Computer science students all over the world go through 3, 4, 5-year programs, and when they come out of those programs, they're still junior developers.
Absolutely.
So this is a process, and the only way that this process becomes maturity is through putting in the hours, writing the code, writing the lines of code.
No, you're so right. And that is probably a bigger struggle for the younger generations because the truth is attention spans are shorter.
Yeah.
And people want instant gratification. And there's also a lot of, again, I'm using the term boot camps, but it's really so true. Boot camps and these crash course programs who are like, hey, 3 months, you're a developer.
You're done. Yeah.
And then you're going to get a job and you're going to make 100K and it's going to be awesome. And it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
and that was part of the, my boot camp didn't say specifically that, but it was a 6-month program.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined it with the intent of learning how to code and then getting hired to code.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a positive experience for me. Unfortunately, I've spoken with many people who did not have positive boot camp experiences, and that sucks, to be honest. They cost a lot of money. It's a time investment.
Exactly.
It's high pressure, and then to come away from that feeling scammed in some way, or again from a lack of knowledge of if this even is going to be a good fit for you, coming away being like, man, I thought it was going to be this one thing and now it's not. So it goes back to me always advising people, just try it for yourself before you sign up for anything. So I do think that is something that is probably a little bit more difficult to navigate now for, I'll say, younger people versus whenever you were starting out in this field. It's just not the same.
Let me put it this way. I find that the later generations, they lack patience. And unfortunately, we're in the patience game. Why? You're going to find a bug, and that bug takes time. And if you don't have the time, if you don't have the patience, if you don't have the perseverance to sit down and just go through the code a million times to figure out why that little thing that just escaped while you were writing your code blew up into this catastrophic error, then no, I'm going to say it's not for you. However, I've always been a proponent of sitting down and designing before you write. So we actually have a term in the industry for just diving into writing code. And once you see enough code, you realize that you're looking at it. We call it spaghetti code. And that's the code that usually gets created when you don't think about anything. You just know the problem, and now you're just going to sit down and produce code to solve it. I usually call that approach throwing code at the problem. Most of the time is ill-advised.
Sure.
What you want to do is you want to understand the problem from all the facets and make sure you're attending, or rather your code is attending to all those details that you haven't attended to. What that means is you need to understand exception handling. You need to understand edge cases. You need to understand problems with multiple recursion. You need to understand. There's a bunch of things that can happen. And if you haven't designed your solution correctly, then you're going to be sitting a lot more in front of your computer trying to figure out what's going on than actually producing code that works and does what you want it to do.
As we continue this, George, I wanted to touch on the fact that you and I have been, I'm very blessed to say, friends for a few months now. We got connected really early on in my journey when I was still in my boot camp. And your first message to me as I was scheduling you being on the show, I found myself scrolling through our LinkedIn conversation. That was such a nice little nostalgia. But your first message to me was, I see you're a boot camp student. If I can help in any way, please let me know. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so, really? Like this is so nice. That was such a positive surprise for me, breaking into this industry and building a public online, posting online, putting myself out there. Was the overwhelming amount of support and encouragement that I got from very seasoned people. And that was just so nice. I think that one thing I've come to learn is how many people who especially have experience and been here for a while, they really like to share knowledge. And they enjoy advising, helping. And I also think too, there's probably a part of your brain too, where you see and you're like, I remember when I was there, like, keep going, you're doing great, because we all start from here, right? Just as you said, it takes the time and effort. And so it meant so much to me that you took the time to reach out to me as a stranger and as a junior. And I want to talk about the fact that that's obviously just something that you really care about, is being a mentor, educating and helping juniors. And can you share a little bit more about why you feel that way and why it's important to you?
So first of all, let me say it's a pleasure to help newcomers in the industry. It's always a pleasure. And to answer your question, why do I do this? Well, I do this because I've seen a lot of misinformation online. I see a lot of opinions that I don't want to say they're incorrect. No, they're entirely way off base, off the mark. They have no idea what they're saying. So I thought, hey, I don't know that much, but I do know what I know. So I know where I can help and how I can help. So maybe I'll put my voice out there. And if I help just one more person, then I've won. And that's what drives me.
That's awesome. That's actually really lovely, George. I appreciate that. And I know in the conversations that you and I have had, because we've had multiple just one-on-one little coffee chats, and the advice, but also the encouragement has meant so much to me. Getting good advice from people who know what they're talking about is priceless. But also the psychological support is also priceless. And I think sometimes that's really not talked about enough, because this is a competitive industry. The market's awful right now. I'm actively in my job search, and just to be honest, not being prideful here, but I'm doing a lot of things that most other junior developers are not doing to be proactive and find a job, and I'm still looking for a job. Yeah. It is what it is. I know it will happen, but it's like, okay, another day. And it is tough, and I think that there probably are a lot of people who even do go through the boot camp, take the courses, whatever that's going to look like for you, that even if they enjoy the creation and the building, may not make it to actually landing a role as a developer, just because of the mental struggle, especially in the current climate. So having a mentor, having resources that can be there for you and advise you and provide that emotional, psychological support, that's really essential. And, for anyone listening who maybe hasn't been very proactive about building in public, posting online, or actively networking, reaching out to others, I mean, how would you advise that people go about looking to find a mentor, and then also finding one that's going to be a good fit for you?
Okay, those are loaded questions.
Sorry.
First of all, finding a mentor is not that hard. There's a bunch of people out there willing to help you for a price.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who are looking to help you for a price just to get that price. So what I would recommend people to do is to first have a go at talking to other people, and that's the way that I recommend anyone trying to get into tech to do. It's not just about finding a mentor, about finding a job. I don't care if you're building in public or not. I don't care if you've got 20,000 followers or none. What we really need to be doing is we're human beings. We crave contact with other human beings, not for any reason other than to communicate, to discuss, to learn, and to pass down what we know. And I've been saying that to a lot of people. You need to start building relationships.
Yes.
It's not like, I've seen this person on LinkedIn. Let's ask them for a job. Let's ask them for mentoring. Why would anyone help you if they don't know you?
100%. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yes.
So start with, hey, I'm George. I'm trying to get into the tech industry, and I'd love to learn more from you. If you get a reply, that's great. If you don't get a reply, well, follow them on LinkedIn, Twitter, there's a jabillion social networks out there. So whatever. Or go onto a forum. Go on Quora. Go on Reddit. Ask your questions. Go on Stack Overflow. Ask people there to give you some advice and pick up the conversations. Don't just expect that people will help you because you're the lead actor in your own life. In everyone's life, everyone is the lead actor. In everyone's life, everyone else is someone else. You know?
Oh my
So
gosh, yes.
so we need to create a relationship. And once that relationship seems fruitful, then we can ask for something. The point is, create those relationships. A network is not a relationship. A network is just that. A network of people who have seen you once. You've maybe exchanged a couple of DMs.
Right.
A relationship is conversations on conversations. It's getting to know people not just because you want them to do something for you. It's because we want to have a relationship.
You're so right. And that is really not talked about enough specifically in this field. It's just not. When I started posting on LinkedIn, it was right after I started my boot camp. It was in February of this year. I did that only with not thinking about relationships at all, just newbie, nobody, breaking in. I
Yeah.
need a job. I'm learning to code. Somebody hire me. That was it. But I figured I should go ahead and start posting now before I get to the point where I'm like looking for a job and then nobody knows me and who's this girl, who cares? Because you're right. You see a stranger, you don't have skin in the game. It doesn't make you a bad person, but and I'm at the point now where, oh my gosh, I get so many messages from people I've never spoken to, and they just immediately ask me for something, send me a resume, fill in the blank, and I ignore them. I do. Because I don't know them. They aren't reaching out to me.
It makes sense. It makes absolute sense. Out of the blue, who are you, man?
Yeah.
You know?
I got things to do. What?
Exactly. On the other hand, if you build a relationship and you don't build a relationship looking for something,
Yes. Yeah.
then that can perhaps in the future be fruitful. Because in every relationship, there's a give and there's a take.
Yes.
And whatever you give, you're going to take. And so if I'm looking for building relationships with people in the industry with the sole purpose of getting a job, well, look, people are not stupid. They'll realize that, look, this person is looking for something from me. On the other hand, if you just open up a conversation, nothing expected,
Yes.
and slowly build up a relationship, just like you did when you had real friends.
What a concept.
Exactly. You build relationships with your friends not because you expect something from them, but because you're like-minded, you like hanging out with them, you like conversing with them, you like butting heads with them sometimes, stuff like that. So do that, and who knows, maybe in the future, when the need arises, they'll ask you for something or you'll ask them for something, and each party will be willing to do what the other person is asking.
Sure. Absolutely.
So it's not about a network. It's about relationships.
It is.
And the only way I think that new people can get into the industry nowadays is through pre-existing relationships, unfortunately. If you know somebody like 4 or 5 years and you go up to them and you say, hey, you know what? I've decided to break into this industry. Well, if they're friends, they're going to help you.
Sure. Absolutely.
And that's going, looking at it from the other side. It's easier for me as an employer to see Brooke's CV rising up from the pile because someone else that I work with came in and told me, hey, you know what? This person, they're really good. They're trying to get into the industry. Take a look at their resume. Yeah, that's what separates your resume from the pile.
100%. And for anyone that doesn't know, what I've been doing for the past 10 years has been working as an executive recruiter. And I have seen, it wasn't in tech, it's been in manufacturing. Mm-hmm. The same principles apply because we're people. It doesn't even matter about the industry, but Exactly. You're absolutely correct. If it's, your friend, somebody that you know, they're mm-hmm. probably going to get picked. At the very least, they're going to get the interview.
Exactly.
You're not just another piece of paper, another stranger in a sea of faces. And that was a big part of me deciding to invest in networking and doing that because, again, and also too, I don't have a computer science degree. I was doing a boot camp, right? So I'm already just paper, less than someone who's had a CS degree. It is what it is. That's fine. So I have to differentiate myself in another way. And
Exactly.
I'm very thankful to say that the best interviews that I've had and have come from those connections, those relationships, and the mentors that I have also come from me having those conversations. And honestly, just for full transparency, I have never once messaged any of these people and said, would you be my mentor? It honestly all came from them continuously just checking in on me over time. And now I'm chatting with them once a week. And I have right now the most, oh my gosh, amazing woman. Shout out to Jay Yapel. I have to take a second and say hi to her, but she's teaching me DSA right now. She is one of the smartest women I've ever met. She's not charging me money. Honestly, she should be. I'm not just saying that, but like, okay, I'll take it. Because she's so smart. She's spending hours with me every week. And she doesn't have to, but I think she sees potential in me. She sees my drive. But we've become friends as well. And I have so much respect for her. And it means so much that she's choosing to invest her time and energy in helping me. And that's such a beautiful, organic thing that has come from those relationships. She reached out to me. I didn't ask her. And I was like, are you kidding? Of course. Yes.
And that's exactly what I mean.
Right.
People will do things for people when they know them, when they're friends, when they build relationships. Asking for something for nothing is never going to go anywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And George, as we're wrapping up, I don't want to miss this point too, because we've talked about how difficult this market is, and especially if you're entering as a nobody with no connections and whatnot. So even me, as someone who I've done the work, I graduated the boot camp, I did well, made good grades, I'm coding, doing all the right things. But still, again, I'm still looking for a job. I'm still getting those rejection emails, whatever. Mindset, I think, is also just as important as the technical skills, right? I'm know JavaScript pretty well. I feel like I do well on the technical interview side of things. But still, going through this journey, it can be discouraging, even though I have a support system, which not everybody does. In fact, I'd say most in my position don't, not one as strong as mine. So it does take a certain level of mental grit, confidence, and one thing I know you touched on too is kind of faking it till you make it mentality.
Yes. So let's say to everyone who's out there listening to this, you're good enough. Everybody needs to understand this. We are good enough. Now, are we good enough compared? Who cares about comparing?
Yeah. Right.
I'm good enough for me. So go in front of the mirror, practice saying this many, many times. You're good enough confidently. Now, if you don't believe it at first, the principle of faking it till making it applies. It's a very sound scientific principle in psychology. Fake it till you make it. It will build your confidence slowly. Now, I don't care how many rejections you get. Those rejections are not for your person. Those rejections are generic rejections to people who have never seen you, never known you. They got a piece of paper, it says your name, and they said no. Big whoop. Does it change who you are? No. Does it make you any less? No. All it does is it tells you, look, you tried, okay, move forward. There's this, I don't know if it's a real story or an urban legend, but Kentucky Fried Chicken, KFC founder, Colonel Sanders, was supposedly a real person, and after the war he didn't have anything to do. His pension was very low, so all he had was this recipe for fried chicken. He decided that he wasn't going to open a restaurant because he couldn't. So he went out and he asked restaurants to buy his recipe and give him a piece of the profit on the recipe. Word is that he got more than 1,000 no's until the first yes. So here's the mind-blowing fact. If he had quitted at 100, 200, 300, 500, 700 no's, KFC would not exist. So don't quit. It costs nothing to not quit. Literally, it costs nothing at all.
Literally, you're right. And that I think that's applies to every success story. Mm-hmm. Any person that you look at, again, regardless of industry, does not matter. You're like, oh my gosh, they made it. And also success is subjective, right? So whatever that looks like to you. But you see that person, you see what they've done, what they've accomplished, and I promise you they're standing on top of that pyramid, and that pyramid is built of all of their failures and all of the rejections and the trials and tribulations that it took to get to that one win. And it does take that level of perseverance. So that, very well said, my friend. Very well said.
Yeah. So look for a mentor that understands you.
Yes.
Persevere. Be patient. Invest in your learning and invest in your growth. Go the extra mile. And that's all it is. That's the recipe for success. There's nothing else other than hard work.
Yes.
Unless it's by pure dumb luck. Win the lottery, pure dumb luck.
Yeah.
Actually doing something with that money, strategy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's it.
This has been such a beautiful conversation. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit down, be on my show. It means so much to me. And, for anyone listening, please follow him on LinkedIn. I'm going to include all the links to every platform that he's on. Be on the lookout for his upcoming book. I know it's going to be fantastic. And I want you all to know he is such a wonderful person to have these conversations with. But I also don't want too many of you messaging him because I'm busy messaging him. And I need his friendship too, so don't steal him from me. But sincerely, he's fantastic. You're so smart and you're so empathetic, and that human connection that I know that you care about and prioritize, it stands out so much to me. And I know anyone that has been a student of yours is so fortunate, George.
Thank you so much. I don't deserve the words. You're very kind, and thank you. You have no idea how greatly I appreciate you. And I just wanted to mention one last thing.
Please.
You are giving a voice to women in tech. Use it. It's so inspiring and so fresh to see a woman trying to break into tech. I don't care. You're a woman in tech. It's so nice to see women getting into this traditionally man-dominated profession. Mm-hmm. You're doing awesome. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that's so nice. It's actually funny. I don't even know if I'm going to include this. I might cut this, but I was talking to one of my mentors last night about having you on my podcast, and I was like, okay, here's the thing. Every time I've had a video call with him, he's been so sweet. I'm to the point of tears. And I was like, but that's not going to happen on my podcast. And here I am. I'm like, thank you. But that was a real conversation I had last night. It just makes me laugh.
Seriously, thank you so much for having me on. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. And thank you.
Absolutely, George. Hey, it's been a pleasure. And thank you to everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Tech Baddie Podcast. See you next week.